So one of the first courses they'll be taking is CS 541. It's called System and Software Standards and Requirements. My name is again James Choi, email address. So I'll be coming to that a little bit later. So let me, before I go to the content of the, actually the syllabus, let me give you a brief background of this course. So some of you know who F.B. Brooks is, or some of you don't. He's really old now. So he's one of the software engineering gurus. He was the manager of IBM 360, as you can see, it's very old. He was also a professor at University of North Carolina in Chapel Hills. Being so famous person, obviously he wrote a lot of papers and publications. There are two publications probably which are very foundational to software engineering. Probably some of you know this. One is called Mythical Mammoth. So you'll be reading this one of this paper in this course. And the other one is called No Silver Bullet, Essence and Accents of Software Engineering. So these are two very foundational papers written by Brooks. And so he's a famous person in software engineering. And he said the following. So having spent a lot of money, spent a lot of time doing the creating IBM 360 operating system, he said that single hardest part of building software system is deciding precisely what to build. So basically finding what the requirements are. No other part is more difficult to rectify later. So if you do wrong requirements, it's very hard to fix it later on. It makes sense. So moreover, there is a stronger statement he said is that basically failure to understand and control the requirements is the #1 cause of project failure. So if you don't understand correctly what the requirements are and also control the changes of requirements as #1 cause of project failure. Also, in terms of positive way of saying is, if you do good requirements is a #1 reason why you're going to succeed. So we can see that this particular statement or stronger statement in the following two studies that have been done. One is a study that has been done, a Goldman Beaver, is in terms of customer satisfaction rates, if you will. So he studied that, his group studied that projects, if requirements are well done, right? So then he found out that 33 out of 39 projects he studied, they said is success. So about 80% of the projects were successful if the customer is very satisfied. Successful basically means customer means is still satisfied with the product. 80% said it's really good product. So satisfaction rate is high. That is very important, right? So people, if you're satisfied with the product, you come back and basically do another product or let them produce another product. So 80% said they're satisfied. So if the requirements are met. From developer's point of view, it's really important too. So there's been also a study, the graph that shows here. That's basically a cost to correct a defect. So if you have a problem with the software, and the cost depends on where you find that particular defect. So they're normalized the cost of the changing or correcting defect during requirements to be cost unit #1. Then they found out, extrapolated that if you find during specification phase, as you're writing down and trying to model things, your solutions, the cost factor is 2. So still a reasonable 1 or 2 double, but still reasonable. If you find the same defect during the design phase, so actually coming up with components, different architecture, solutions, so the cost factor is 6. Now, if you find the defect, same defect during the implementation and so testing stage, right? It costs 20, so 20-fold is very hard. Now, if you find that during the same defect during the operational phase, that is during the maintenance phase, the cost is the sky's the limit. So some studies say 60-fold, other studies say 200-fold or more. So this particular study suggests that the earlier you find the defect, right, the development cost, which is during the requirement specification as an implementation, which is much lower. So if you find defect later, the cost is very high. So from developer's point of view, having good requirements makes sense because it gives you a better product, and also so customer satisfaction is higher, and also the cost is lower, right? So that's why it's really important we do really good requirements. So now that's basically the foundation or background behind this particular software requirements course. So the learning goals of this course is basically two things. One is how then to establish an excellent requirements of software system. Now, probably some of you know that software development, it used to be called, we called it, okay, said I lost audio for a couple of seconds. Okay, so we used to call it software development, right? Now we call it software engineering because it is process behind this, so we got certain steps. Now, some of you probably know also requirement development is now engineering process. You call it requirement engineering. So it goes through certain steps, not just developing it. So it goes through elaboration, analysis, specification, and verification. These are individual process that requirements has to go through in order to come up with excellent requirement. So we call that requirement engineering. So development requirement itself is the engineering process. And so once you develop, establish an excellent requirements, we have to know how to manage it. So managing meaning it changes, right? So requirements don't stay constant. It changes even during the requirement engineering process, the requirements do change. So we need to manage the changes. So we have to learn how to manage these requirements. So the bulk of this course will be how to develop it, establish it, and then we're going to talk about how to also manage the changes, right? So, and then we're going to do a project, and we're going to use the IEEE standard format in order to write a lot of documentation in order to come up with excellent requirements. So that's basically the main goal, establishing excellent requirements, and also how to manage the requirements. So the textbook is Uyghur's book. It's really easy to read and good book. Used quite a bit also in the industry, so it's really good for all of us. This third edition, Microsoft Press 2013. This one, you can get it Amazon.com. Also, there is also ebook version of it, so you can get it today if you want it. So if you go to Amazon.com, actually they offer also ebook version. So you can, or you can go anywhere else. There should be ebook version of it. It's very easy to read, but it has a lot of content in it. There is a recommended textbook. It's from Smith. Basically talks about software engineering standards. It came out 2000. Now, first one is required. Second one is if I need certain things, I'm going to trying to make slides and let you know. So you don't have to buy the second one so you don't have to buy one. But first one, a required textbook from Uyghurs, you need to buy it, right? And also I'll be posting a lot of online materials, especially papers, like the papers that I mentioned from Brooks, Mythical Amendment, and No Silver Bullets paper. So those are, again, foundational software engineering papers that you should read. So I'm going to post those and you can read those too. So first one is required. This one is not required, but there are a lot of online additional materials. So let's talk about briefly coursework. Basically, there are, in any other class probably, there are three things you have to do. Number one is exam. Second one is project, a team project. And since we're not gonna see you quite a bit, not gonna see in the classroom version, so you have to participate individually also. So the participation points also. So let's talk about initial exam. There are two exams. One is midterm, the other one is final. Midterm counts 20% and the final is 30%. So, I mean, you took midterm before, so probably there's nothing much to say, except there's no makeup midterm exam. If you miss midterm exams, you should let me know in advance if you can. But if something happens, unforeseen, then you should let me know after the fact and with some evidence of why you missed it. Then your final will have increased rate. So your final will be 50% rather than 30% if you missed the midterm and you have excuse why you missed it. Okay. We're gonna use exam feature of titanium. I talked about that about 1 week before the actual exam. I'll make a small sample test available so you can see how that works, so you feel a little bit more comfortable. So we'll talk about more exam 1 week before actual exam is taking place. So we'll get to that. So exam counts 50%. There are term projects, a group project, typical size 3 to 4. As you can see, the project mainly is developing requirements. There is a requirements document, SRS, software requirements specification documents based on IEEE standard. So again, I'll have one section on titanium. There we'll talk about projects. So we'll get to that a little bit later. So I'll be talking I'll communicate with you about the exam a little bit later. Okay. So that 30%. So then 20% is participation points. So 10% goes to chapter summaries. Now it sounds like a little bit childish, but why do you have chapter summaries? But since I'm not really seeing you in terms of in the classroom version, so I watch some people don't participate at all. So I'm not sure how you are doing, what you are doing, kind of. So I have created a small, one way I can communicate with you, kind of, it's chapter summaries. So that is, if you read each chapter, so we have, the book has 32 chapters. We're not gonna cover entire, all the chapters, but chapters that are really important for us. So if you read each chapter, you should write about 1 or 2 pages per chapter. So typically 1.5 line spacing, 11 or 12 font size. If you're a little bit smaller, some people wanna write more than 2 pages, that's okay. But don't try to go to like 30 pages. Some people write 15 pages of chapter summaries. So you could, but I don't really recommend it. So 1 or 2 pages perfectly fine. Some chapters are simple. You don't need to write extra two pages. But some chapters have more content, so you can write more than 2 pages if you wanted to, but generally 1 or 2 pages. Each chapter summary consists of 2 parts, right? What is the basic part number 1? So you should try to make part 1. So important concept of this chapter, so content itself, right? If you read textbook, chapter 1, for example, to write the concept of this chapter, the content, right? The part number 2, it says part number 2 is your ideas, your experiences, your thoughts, your lessons you learned from the chapter. So what did you learn from this chapter? So write your, basically, your experiences, your thoughts, ideas, you should write that in part number 2. So it should be a little bit different. Individuals should have different. So you can say, for example, you read, for example, about importance requirements. You can say, part number 2, well, in our company, we don't do any requirements at all. Right. So then we notice a lot of chaos, a lot of problems. So those things you can write in part number 2. That's where I can distinguish whether actually what you're thinking about that particular chapter. So there should be 2 chapters, right? One is the content itself. Again, it's really important, right? Part 2 is really important. So you write your experiences, lessons, and thoughts in part number 2. So that accounts to 10%. So that I'll accept late turn-in. Some people miss it. So there, but if you miss it, I'll accept late attendance for chapter summaries. But there will be obviously some late attending deductions. There is 10% automatic deductions plus 1% each day you're late. Because if you're late by 1 week, that is 7 days, you're gonna get a 16% deduction. So the maximum you can get is 8.4% or 8.4 points, if you will, out of 10. All right, if you wait by 1 week. Yeah, there is, I'll let you, yeah, I'll tell you about the cutoff date. So give me a little bit of time here. I'll get to that, all right? Thank you for the question. So let me then, the next part of participation is discussion boards, 10%. So there will be discussion board for each chapter. So then you're gonna write your thoughts here. Don't write your contents. Content everyone can read. Here you can write your thoughts and your ideas of a particular chapter. So whatever you said, you're gonna write in part number 2 of each chapter summaries, you can write here, all right? So again, you can, give the same example that I mentioned. So if you just read importance of requirements, you can say, oh, I know in this particular discussion board, you can say in our company, we're not doing requirements at all. And we know there's a lot of problems. And if you want to change some things, then, nobody knows what's doing. So you can write things, those kind of things in your discussion board, no contents, right? So, but your thoughts, your ideas which you basically have done in chapter, part number 2 of each chapter summary, you can write here. So I expect at least 2 meaningful chapters per postings per chapter. So each chapter you should post 2. You can start a new post, or you can respond to existing posting. So that's counts also reasonable, meaningful. What is meaningful? Well, if you write, say, I like it, or I find it's really interesting, that's not really meaningful. So you know what meaningful is, a reasonable thoughts, process included, that's a meaningful posting. Your posting will not be graded, but I'll review time to time, and I'll give you some thoughts on that also necessary. But mainly this is a way of you can participate in the class, online class. That's why it's mainly there. Otherwise, I'm not seeing you at all. I don't see what you're basically, how you're participating. So that's one way you can participate. One way I can communicate with you. So that's a discussion board. Now for each discussion board, I'm gonna show you in a moment, it says deadline. Then there's no late turn-in discussion boards, okay? You have to post by the deadline. So actually that will disappear. So if you miss it, then you have to contact me somehow. But yeah, so posting and write-ups, can this include a recommend? Yeah, sure. Yeah, anything related to chapter 1. So if I give you, for example, readings, chapter 1 related readings, you can also read the papers, the readings, then you can post those too, right? So that would be a really good thing, actually. Yeah. So let's see, there are other questions here. Okay, so let me move on here. So again, grading policy is a midterm 20%, final 30%, project 30%, and class participation 20% total. So it gives 100%. So course final will be, grade will be assigned. So the way I grade it typically, I'll be using plus, as you probably know, calcium floatness plus and minus system. So what I typically do is, if you have 90% or above, at least A minus. That means you may get higher grade than A minus. So there is no curve. If you get 90% or above, you get A minus automatically. If you get, say, 93, then actually I may give an A. Sometimes even if you're lower than 93, I give A. So minimum you get A minus. Typically, I try to give higher. Okay, so there's another question here. It's difficult. I'm working on a space where I can discuss detail about software I'm writing. So, okay, probably it's better to ask those questions a little bit later. I'm not quite understanding what you're mentioning here. So let me go finish the first part, then I can answer your questions here. So then, again, this one is in order to succeed this course, first of all, you should read course syllabus one more time. You should be able to get it now. It's available on Titanium. And most importantly, there is course calendar associated with this course. Let me briefly share that course calendar. Alt-S. So Alt-S. Okay, new share. So course calendar. Okay, so this is available also online. You should actually print this one out, leave it next to your work desk or whatever, or take a picture of it, so you know what you have to do. All right. So describes basically the to-do list of things, right, and with time frame. So we're going to have on total we have 5 modules. So module number 1, module 2, 3, 4, 5. And so each module is about 3 weeks. So first week 1 and 2, 3 is, I call it module 1, and module 2 is 4, 5, 6. Module 3 is 7, 8, 9. So entire semester is divided in 5 modules. Each module is about 3 weeks, right? And then, so week of 24 this week, which is next Monday. So basically it says, all right, so week of starting 31st, 9/6, 9/7, 9/13. So then things you have to do, getting ready and software requirements chapter 1. So there are basically things you have to do is listed on the right-hand side, right? And then you see here the deadlines here, right? So 9/13, for example, S means submit meaning you need to submit. You need initially by 9/6, you need to submit a group sign-up sheet, right? I'll let you know a little bit later, so we don't have time to discuss everything here about the project, but I'll give you enough time to talk about what group project looks like, and you need to submit initially form a group. And there's sign-up sheet for that, so I know who's submitting what groups do I have, and so there's sign-up sheet you have to fill out. Then you have to submit chapters. Chapter summaries for module 1, that is chapter 1 through 5, all together, and discussion board for module will close. So there is one discussion board per module. So there's one discussion board, but there are 5 sections, all right? So that for the discussion board, and also you need to submit chapter summaries. Same thing where module 2, there is 10.4, which is project part number 1 is due, and 10.4 is also you have to submit summaries for module 2, which is chapters 6 through 10 all together, and discussion board 2 module closes. So again, it's very important that you download and print out the course schedule, as it basically has all the things you have to do and with due dates, right? And it discusses also midterm. We're gonna, again, I'll talk to you more about midterm taking place between 10/10 and 10/11. So S meaning you need to submit it, right? And there's a fall break starting week of 11/23, and then final exam. So again, this is really important that you download, all right? So let me go back to my new share here. Stop new share. Go back to my orientation. All right. So course calendar is really important, right? Okay. So print out and leave it next to your work area. Okay. You can or take pictures. You can, if you travel, and you can look at it. What you have to do. And also then you need to read, obviously, the chapters that are specified in course calendar. And then you need to, there is presentation slides, and there is also recordings, voice recordings. You should listen to those. And then you turn in assignments for the week and participate in discussions or weeks, more particular module that is, right? And then using the appropriate discussion boards. Then there's midterm, you need to complete project and the final exam. Okay, where is this file located for download? It's actually UK 541. All right, someone can discuss that. All right, so finally, final notes. Again, Dr. Choi mentioned this. I think I'm running out of time actually. So again, most important thing is that you should check your emails at least 2 or 3 times a week, right? Probably once a day probably is recommended, but at least 2 or 3 times a week, all right? You should do that. So let me start video now. Okay, so if you have any questions, send me an email or Zoom during my office hour. If you go to Titanium, there is a Zoom link associated with it. So you can click on that. Actually, you can see me during the office hours. So you can join the Zoom session also. Usual response time for email is about less than 24 hours during the weekdays, and it may take a little bit longer during the weekends. But usually I check in at least 2 or 3 times a day, so you should less than 24 hours. But if you don't get anything within 24 hours, you should probably resend it, probably went to somewhere else, or there is something. You should get at least response from me saying, okay, I got it, I'll respond to you later. So at least you should get some response. Okay, question, probably can, since I'm running out of time, I think I'm out of time, right? 9:15, okay, or let's say, 10:15. So I ran out of 5 time. So if you have any questions, I can answer probably 1 or 2 questions, but we can talk more about it later when we have a Q&A session. So if you have any question, please group submissions. Okay, so group submission, you need to form initially group. As group sign-up sheet, you have a couple of weeks to find your group. I know initially you'll not be able to find, some of you know your same areas and you know each other. It's very easy to find the group. Some of you don't. So I know that, and we'll give you enough time to form a group. So the group submission, basically you need to form a group leader who is basically communicating most with me. And then that person will be in charge of submission of the group projects. There are multiple milestones you have to submit. So you need to submit 1 copy per group. You typically, the group leader can determine or say who need to submit it, but I need just 1 copy per group. Okay, perfect. So far each module we submitted this one. So you need to submit actually 2 postings per chapter. So if you have 3 chapters or 5 chapters per module, then you need to submit 10 postings. So 2 meaningful postings per chapter. Okay, so typically each module, each module consists of 5 chapters. Then you need to submit it, or 5 or 6. Then you need to submit either 10 or 12 postings. All right. So it looks like that's it in terms of 541. So we can have more time later on during QA session. Again, thank you and good luck, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you, Dr. Choi. I'm done.
Yeah, thank you.